Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our very first webinar created by the Rohingya youth to commemorate the third anniversary of the exodus of nearly 1 million Rohingyas. We are both here to highlight the experience of youth as genocide survivors and to remember our brothers and sisters back in the refugee and IDP camps. This is a great opportunity for our viewers to see the faces of the conflict rather than numbers. This following webinar will be in English, but shortly I'll deliver a message in Rohingya. Assalamu alaikum. Ara webinar iba English toibo. Hali tumhara notario ki ara onarare foragi goi. A webinar ara UK youth nojawan goridde onarare monot goribolla onara je halato gyoy 3 বছর আগে ইনরে মনত গরিবল্লা আর ইয়ান ইংলিশ মাঝে কিয়ল্লা গরির হইলে আরা পয়েন্টে আউটসুইচ গি আরা দিলা ইয়ার আগে মানুষে যে জুলুম হয় এই নর সাইতো গি তো ইয়ান ইংলিশ মাঝে গুড়া ইন্টারন্যাশনাল কমিউনিটি আছে ইউকের গভর্নমেন্ট আছে ইউএস এর গভর্নমেন্ট আছে ইনরে ইংলিশ মাঝে আরা এন হই পারিবা তোমরা উড়ো আরা রোহিঙ্গা হাজ করো আরা রোহিঙ্গার মানুষের জুলুম ইন দেখো তো ইন মেসেজ আরা রোহিঙ্গার দিবল্লা আরা ইংলিশ মাঝে রোহিঙ্গার হিসাবে দিবল্লা Gora UK government, Gora international community there, English maze dium. Thank you. My name is Siraz al-Islam, and I'm a 19-year-old law student at the University of Manchester, and I'll be your host today.
My name is Ridwana Jamal, and I am the second co-host of this webinar. I'm 19 years old, and I'm currently a medical student living in the UK. We are going to begin our webinar today with some brief introductions from our wonderful panel of Rohingya youth. First, I would like to call forward Mohammed Ayub.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mohammed Ayub. I am 16-year-old. I live in Bradford and now I study my A-level.
Next, I would like to call forward Ridwana Hussain.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ridwana Hussain. I'm 16 years old. I live in London and now I'm studying my A-levels.
Next is Kashif Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Kashif Muhammad. I am 17 years old and I live in London.
Next, I would like to call forward Halim Salim.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Halim Salim. I am 14 years old and I'm studying my GCSEs.
Next, I would like to call forward Asif Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad Asif. I'm 18 years old and I live in London and now I'm studying my BTech levels.
Next is Junaid Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Junaid Mohammed. I'm 15 years old and I'm doing my GCSE.
Finally, we would like to introduce Salem Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Salem Mohammed. I'm 17 years old and I'm studying my A-levels.
Thank you everyone for your introductions. Now that we fully introduced ourselves, let's move on to our first segment of the day, Reflections from Altswitch. 3 of our Rohingya youth have written some blogs, which includes personal experiences of being Rohingya in the UK, as well as what they thought about the trip to Altswitch. I will now pass this on to my fellow co-host, Siraz al-Islam, to hear from our bloggers.
Thank you, Ridwana. So on to our first blogger, Halim Salim. I would like to call you forward, a 14-year-old from London who has written a blog titled Mankind's Mistake. So Halim, let's start off with you. Just explaining to the audience, can you give us a brief summary about what your blog is about?
My blog is about mankind repeating its own mistake, and this is very devastating because in the past we've seen the Armenian genocide, the mass killing of millions of Jews, and now the Rohingya people. Like, what is this? This is the mistake that mankind is repeating, and their mistake should only be a cautionary tale to you.
Thank you. I think that's an important message. So why have you chosen this particular topic?
I've chosen this particular topic because I believe everyone makes mistakes, but the way to overcome your mistakes in the past is to remember them and learn from them. Whereas us, mankind itself, is not learning from its own mistakes. We repeating. Look at the past. Look at the millions of people that's died, and now it's happening now because we have not remembered our mistakes from the past.
Thank you, thank you. So as we know, you went to Auschwitz. So what was the most interesting thing you saw in the concentration camps, and how is it similar to the lives of the Rohingyas?
In my opinion, I think the most interesting thing we saw was when people's heads were shaven off and their hair was used to make carpets. That was very gruesome and cruel, and it's just an example of the cruel treatment the ethnic minority are getting because of all this persecution and Islamophobia in the world. Like the Rohingya people, they are being raped, they're being killed. They are. This is just the shaven hair is just an example of um, all the devastating things that are happening to them.
Thank you, Halim, for that.
Now I would like to open the floor to Mohammed Ayub, a 16-year-old from Bradford who's written a blog titled Delving into the Past. Ayub, can you please tell the audience what your blog entails?
So my blog starts off by giving a brief idea to the audience of what Auschwitz camp is and how it is to live there. So then I go on talking about how many prisoners there were and what type of prisoners they were and how they were murdered. For example, kids were being used in medical experiment, and around 200 prisoners were in a gas chamber and died there. So then after this, I start talking about how I felt towards the camp when I was there. And now then I write about how after 75 years, how I feel about another genocide happening. So in the end, I talk about how my feeling is toward the camp itself.
All right, thank you, Ayub. I think it's really important to understand the context of where you're speaking from. So can you just tell everyone about your birthplace?
So about my birthplace, I was born in Kutupalong, Bangladesh, which is the largest camp in the world. I know that Kutupalong had no good education system, so people would mainly be jobless. So there was no proper food or housing. So sorry about that. So the housing was made out of broken bamboo sticks. So which means that if it rained, the rain would go inside the house and people would get wet easily. People in Kutupalong were also treated as outsiders. So this means that people didn't care about them. And so the medicine, so people, if they were ill, they would have no medicine, no food, and no travel.
All right, thank you. That was really insightful. So what do you remember specifically about your birthplace? Do you have any memories?
I don't remember much about me being in the camp itself because I was a kid, but as a kid, I was meant to play, but I couldn't do that, unfortunately, because there was no place to play and my parents couldn't afford to buy me toys. So overall, the condition was not good there. So and it was somewhere I'd never hoped to live. In 2015, I went back to the camp with the hope having the camp in a good condition, but it turned out to be more worse because the place got overpopulated and overcrowded.
All right, thank you. So how was it like to transition into life in the UK? What was different from back home?
At first, it was hard to transition my life into UK because I didn't know English properly. So it was hard to participate with other people. So and another way how my life transition was that in back home we couldn't do anything. My parents couldn't do anything. But when we came to England, my parents had the freedom to do what they want. So my parents were in the refugee camp for 18 years where they couldn't build a life for themselves or their kids. So but when they came here, my parents managed to buy a house and everything and do what they could for their kids. For 18 years in Bangladesh camp, they didn't have passport, document, or proof of identity. But when they came to England, they managed to get the British passport.
All right, yeah, I mean, your story is really inspirational. And let's just move on to our final question. Ayub, how has Auschwitz impacted you as a former refugee?
So as you know, the conditions of the prisons in Auschwitz were similar to the refugee camp which they are going through. However, the liberation of the camp after the liberation of the camp of the victim and the Holocaust survivors, they rebuilt themselves into success. So as a former refugee, I take inspiration from this to be a successful person, and I wish our community is successful like other communities such as the Jewish community.
Thank you, Ayub.
Thank you for that brilliant insight, Ayub. And on to our final blogger, Rizwana Hussain, a 16-year-old from London, who's the author of the blog titled The Unspoken Atrocities of Genocide. So Rizwana, can you tell me a little about your blog, please?
Yes, so my blog is about one of the most overlooked yet detrimental aspect of genocide, robbing people of the one thing that would otherwise be the key to their freedom: hope. I highlight how all political agendas create this false sense of hope and then shatter it, leaving behind hopeless people with no will to live, no will to fight, which means that there is very little resistance, which in turn means that totalitarianism can rage rampant. And I do this using Nazism and all the information given to me at Auschwitz to highlight this.
Wow, that is really an important topic. So you've chosen to talk about the unspoken, sorry. Why did you do this?
Well, I think it's very obvious because we often tend to focus on the things that are obvious to us, and that detracts our attention from the underlying problem when we focus on the overt. So a building cannot fall unless there is a problem with the base. And so instead of focusing on the rubble, I think we should focus on what happened to the base. What is the problem with the base? And that in turn will allow us to identify future problems and to mitigate future atrocities, such as the genocide with the Rohingya people.
So as we are aware, you yourself are a genocide survivor. So what was your inspiration for writing this blog?
Well, whilst I was at Auschwitz, we entered the gas chambers, and my tour guide told me about how the prisoners were made to hang up their clothes as if they were about to return. And, that creates that delusion of reprieve. That is what creates that false sense of hope. And that is what ultimately led to the people not having any hope left. And although this is a very specific small scale example, this very technique is used on a larger scale to influence whole countries.
Do you believe this same technique are being used against or for the Rohingyas or any other communities?
Yes, I think when it comes to any sort of genocide, creating hopeless people and creating minimal resistance is what will allow dictatorship and this totalitarianism to rule, because otherwise they wouldn't stand a chance. Otherwise the people would fight back.
So would you agree in saying we should be hopeful for the future, or do you believe that we shouldn't have this hope? What is your opinion on that?
Of course we should have hope. This is why we're all here, because we are hopeful for our people. We believe that we can make a difference, and this is the hope that will, inshallah, and hopefully make us all thrive and make this campaign and this movement just exacerbate in importance and make us more aware, more people aware, to everyone watching aware about what's happening so that they can take action.
Thank you. That was a brilliant message. Is to our viewers, do not lose hope. We are here together. And finally, Rizwana, do you believe your experience is similar to other Rohingyas around the world?
Well, I think everyone has their own unique story, so no. Me personally, I think I'm in a very privileged position. I have access to all basic amenities. I have access to healthcare, to education. I'm not living in constant fear for my life like my Rohingya brothers and sisters. So with that conscious, I live with the intention to do everything I do to the best of my ability, if not for myself, if not for my family, for all the people who are literally dying to be in my position. I think of them, because that could have easily been me.
Thank you. Inshallah, the pains of our brothers and sisters back in the camps and in the IDP camps are eased. And to our viewers, we must remember to have this uncomfortable conversation, like our blogger Ridwana said. It is from now forward that we must speak of the unspoken. Thank you, Ridwana. So that ends the blogging segment of our webinar. Thank you to our talented Rohingya bloggers for your contributions. I hope the audience can agree that the Rohingya youth are finally speaking their mind on a topic that touches our hearts and the hearts of everyone else in the community. It is now time for our next segment, question time. We are now going to open the floor to our Rohingya youth to answer tough and thought-provoking questions on struggles with identity, personal and wider conflict, and finally, lessons from the Holocaust. Our co-host, Ridwana Jamal, will now facilitate this segment.
Thank you, Sarazal. Let's begin this segment with one of our Rohingya youth, Asif Mohammed. Good afternoon, Asif. Let's start this off with you just telling the audience the place you were born. Asif?
Good afternoon. I was born in Middle Eastern country called United Arab Emirates, and which is known for their tourism and is a wild deserted area.
Nice. So I'm sure people have been made aware of in the past the upsetting satellite images of Arakan State burnt to the ground. So tell me, Asif, how does it feel not being able to see your country the same way again?
Honestly speaking, I was shocked and terrified when I saw the satellite images of the Rakhine state burning, and yeah, it kind of gave me the sense of risk that I can't go back to my country due to my ethnic group, and yeah.
Thank you, Asif. So as part of the Rohingya youth, do you feel you have a duty to the Rohingyas?
Me being part of Rohingya youth, I have a big duty for my Rohingya brothers and sisters, where I see myself helping by helping them, raising their awareness with what they're going through in this time, like the genocide and fleeing away from their own country. And yeah, I can see the situation of them in my heart, that they're suffering a lot, and they need our help. And I'm very privileged with the uh, necessities I have, like internet and social media, where I can raise my voice and reach out to millions, so they can be aware of our situation, of our people's situation in Myanmar.
Thank you, Asif. That was really thoughtful and considerate. So now I would like to call upon Sarazo Islam, who is currently studying law at university, for just a couple of questions. So from your background as a young Rohingya activist, I am sure you have seen firsthand the challenges that many people have to face when working for Rohingya rights. So what I would like to ask you is, what can we do to fight indifferences?
Thank you, Ridwana, for that question. And it is an important topic that we as a community, both Rohingyas and as human beings, must have. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to everyone, both Rohingyas and non-Rohingyas, working for the causes of our people. It is without you that we wouldn't have been here so far. It is with you that we can proudly call ourselves Rohingyas. It is because of you, the international community is finally looking at the Rohingyas as human beings. So thank you to our activists, to our people, and to our government. Thank you. And to the question, what can we do to fight indifferences? It must be established at first that indifferences is not common just to our community. Indifferences are everywhere. And this is, in a way, healthy. If we all agreed with something, we would have no progress. So it is good that we have different opinions, that we have different way of life, and that we have different approach to tackling questions, to tackling segments. However, we must remember, first and foremost, I, and you are Rohingyas, regardless of where you're born, regardless of where you were brought up. Our identity, our culture stems from Rohingya, from Arakan state. And no one, not even the Burmese military, can take this away from us. It is us together that we can fight. What must we do to fight indifferences? We must come on a common ground. We must believe that we're all equal, that we're not better than another, because that makes us no difference to our perpetrators. So you, Rohingya brothers and sisters, and us, we're same, we're equal, and together we can work together. And for my brothers and sisters in the camps, ara tuarar foti asi, ara ere juan foinin has goride, tuarar has Allah. Ere tinno diaza shatara lota badi in zino ye ara foti din ajalota, and agati ailfan, tuarar Allah has gujum. Ara together, ara ugwa, tuarar zulum haidin ara no forai. And together we are one.
Thank you, Sarazo. That was really, really, motivational, and I really understand what you're saying. So do you yourself feel different from others? And if so, why?
Of course. Like Ridwana Hussein mentioned earlier on, we all come from different walks of life. And even within the Rohingya community, we've all seen and experienced different perspectives on life. The reason I feel different from others in the UK, especially because that's where I am, in our climate, in our context, is because I am a former refugee. I lived and was born in one of the largest Rohingya refugee camps in the world. The childhood experience I had is not what a child should go through. It's not what a 8-year-old should have been through. In here, a normal child would think about what toys they're going to play with, when school is next time. But for me, I had to think about when was the next time I would get fed, if I could go outside without being stopped and searched, if I could go outside and live free. And the second of all, I, alongside my panelists today, we're all genocide survivors. And with that comes a heavy burden, because we have to live through the experience of our parents and of ourselves and of our brothers and sisters every single day. We have to remember over 750,000 people have had to migrate. We have to remember over 18,000 of my mothers and sisters were raped. We have to live through this fact every single day. And on top of that, the process for justice has been so slow. The process to get our rights, the process to be able to call ourselves Rohingya freely has been so slow. And thus, I feel different from others. So what must we do from now on? What actions must we take to help solve this? We and our viewers, our international community, and our government need to put a face on the conflict. We need to make sure that we are not demeaned, we are not lessened to a statistics or a number. I am more than the 1.2 million refugees in the camps. My grandma, who has lived in the camp for 30 years, she's more than her refugee status. We are more than a statistic, than a number. We are the face of this conflict. We have experienced this genocide and we have to live with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarazo, for sharing your story with everyone. Our next speaker will now be Salem Mohammed. So Salem, I would like to just ask you a somewhat personal question, but how do you feel about your parents emigrating out of Burma?
Thank you very much, Rizwana. I think we can all agree that it's a terrible thing for someone to flee their country, their land that they grew up on as carefree children because of xenophobic acts and the horrible acts that's happening back home. You lose a part of yourself. You lose a part of your culture. A country is meant to be a core of a person. You know, some people say, oh, I'm going back home for a holiday. I can't say that. My Rohingya brothers and sisters cannot say that. That really hits deep for me because I've never been to Burma. I've never seen the ground or the land of Burma. I've never touched soil of Burma. So that's really sad for me. And yeah, I wish we could go back, and it's really tough.
Thank you, Salim. So being a young Rohingya advocate, how do you feel you are affected by the Rohingya genocide?
It feels like our Rohingyan identity is trying to be stripped away from us as Rohingyan people. And for me, personally, for me, I didn't know a lot about our Rohingyan culture. That so there was a massive disconnect for me. There was a point where I didn't know where I belonged. There was a massive identity crisis. You know, you're being subjected to so much xenophobia, so much Islamophobia. You're like, should I just not should I not accept that part of myself? You start to question yourself. But unfortunately, we have this platform where we can talk about our experiences, and we can talk about our pains, our suffers, our we can talk about everything and basically help people empathize with our cause.
Thank you, Salim. The question time segment will now be led by our co-host, Sirazul Islam.
Thank you to our other co-host, Ridwana, for facilitating that, and to our panelists for answering your questions and giving us your insight. On to the second half of our panelists. First, I would like to call up Kashif. Kashif, how has the situation of the Rohingya conflict affected your faith?
Thank you, Sirazul. Yeah, it's affect my faith and my humanity, and it's hurt that our Muslim brothers and sisters are dying every single day. However, by the help of international organization, we can be together and can help our brother and sister who are suffering genocide.
Thank you. Thank you. It is an important message what Kashif said. We must not lose faith in humanity. So Kashif, your community, our community, we're a group of genocide survivors. So could you tell me a little about that? What is your community like? Is it hard to deal with this fact?
Thank you. As a genocide survivor, it's been every together because it forced you to create a home, a community away from your actual home. Therefore, being a genocide survivor is our duty to support each other and never lose hope.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, our viewers, we must never lose hope. So on to our next speaker, Rizwana Jamal, who is a young medical student. Rizwana, could you tell me a little bit about your identity and what problems did you come to face with facing your identity, what coming to terms with it? Could you tell me a little, please?
Personal to me. So I come from a Burmese Muslim and Rohingya background, and growing up I've always struggled to come to terms with my identity. You know, I belong to two very different and niche communities, but they're both, you know, beautiful in their own way. They have so much diversity. But if I mentioned I was Rohingya or Burmese, there's that constant worry of, you know, will people judge me for claiming an identity, or am I allowed to belong to both? I don't know enough about both cultures because we weren't given the time to educate ourselves. And I've always wanted to be proud of my Rohingya and Burmese heritage, but I am honestly so disheartened at the fact that people are willing to make Rohingya youth, especially because in the UK, you know how we come in different colors and, you know, we are claiming different nationalities. So, you know, we feel like outsiders. People don't listen to what we have to say most of the time. But, you know, obviously this is a fantastic opportunity to show this and express my feelings on this because, you know, it affects us all. And so instead of dividing ourselves between what group we belong to or whether we have spoken about Rohingya rights before or not, I think we should just all be open-minded to the fact that if you are grassroots Rohingya or you are sympathetic to the killing of harmless victims of genocide, basically you are human. You have every right to speak on Rohingya issues.
Thank you. That was a powerful, powerful message. And it is a topic that I believe many of our panelists and our viewers have a difficulty to come to terms with. Is our identity. And I must say this, we must all be proud of our Rohingya heritage and culture. On to our next question. As a Rohingya, how do you feel about the Burmese people?
So Even though I am obviously angered by the actions of the Burmese military, personally, I do not harbor any hatred towards the Burmese community, because we need to know where to place the blame. You know, this is ultimately the fault of the Burmese government, the Burmese military, who enable the cleansing of Rohingya from Myanmar. So instead of, you know, placing hate on a particular group of people, you know, look how terrorism comes about. We relate an extreme to a group of people when we don't know the whole story. If the world did that to us, we are angry, so we shouldn't do that to other people. So I do not hate the Burmese people. This is a problem of politics, of government. This is a problem that everyone should be angry about at the same time, but we should not divide ourselves up for this fact.
Thank you. So, just to extend with what you've just said, you said you don't hate the Burmese people. So, what is your view on forgiveness as a genocide survivor?
Thank you, Sirazo. So, in an ideal world, we can all pretend that we can just forgive each other and move on, right? That's like the perfect picture. But however, when the problem is as deep-rooted and complex as the Rohingya issue, I think can we truly forgive the heinous and brutal acts committed towards an ethnic minority unless true justice is established? I think this is a question many of us will have to ask ourselves in a few years' time when, you know, things are progressing with justice, because being in the heat of this ongoing genocide, there's no doubt that tensions will be raised. We will be angry about this. However, forgiveness will play a huge part in the future when we come to unify all parts of Burma, which is a future I am ultimately looking forward to.
Thank you. And I do hope that we all get to participate in a beautiful Burma. And to allow forgiveness, like Rizwana mentioned, we must get justice and accountability. So thank you, Rizwana. On to our next speaker, Junaid Mohammed. So Junaid, I'd like to call you forward, please. So can you tell me, what is your view? What are your views on the recent xenophobia the Rohingyas have faced around the world?
Thank you for. First of all, let me tell you the meaning of xenophobia. Xenophobia is disliking or prejudice against people from other country. Now, my view on recent xenophobia on our Rohingya brothers and sisters. Burmese military using xenophobia to turn our Rohingya brothers and sisters to Rohingya people, which make me really sad, because we are very nice of group of people, which many people in Burma they couldn't see it. Yeah.
Thank you. So to extend on your answer for our viewers, what can the rest of the world do to help this?
Rest of the world can help by donating or raising awareness on social media or any platform that can use, and keeping them in their prayers.
Thank you. And for our viewers, you must take this into consideration. Please continue fighting for us. So that ends that part. And back to our bloggers. I believe you have inspired a lot of people today with your insight. And after seeing so many emotions as a young Rohingya, I ask you this, all three of you. What changes do you want to see in the world today? Can I please get you to answer this question first?
So the changes around the world, the changes I want to see is the genocide and conflict happening around the world. I want them to stop, because the people are trying leaving their own home because of someone else. They're getting forced to do something else they don't want to do. So stopping the genocide and conflict would be a big thing, and it would help a lot of people. So, and also people should be given the freedom they need to, and not getting forced to do what they are told. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite an important message for our viewers today. And now, secondly, Halim, tell me, what changes do you want to see in the world?
I think this is a very deep and personal question, because there is lots of changes I would like to see to the world. There is so much bad going on: pollution, genocide around the world. All of these crimes, all of these bad things, they all have one cause, which is human greed And the one thing I would like to change is us humans, to stop being greedy, because this greed can cause corruption and all of the evil going around in the world.
Thank you. Quite an important message again. We must stop greed to better our world today. And now finally, Ridwan and Hussein, given your interesting choice of topic, and to remind our viewers again, her topic was the unspoken atrocities of genocide. What do you want to see change?
I would like to see a shift in attitude, a shift in mindset, because unless something changes in you as an individual, nothing will change in your home, nothing will change in your community, nothing will change in your country, and ultimately nothing will change in the world. So it all starts with you. No matter how insignificant you might think it might be, you need to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Do you think this is a feasible solution, or is something that we can all do?
Of course, it all, like I said, it all starts off with the individual. Once you start to do the change, people will be intrigued, people will start to follow. You know, if you see any sort of in the specific case of the Rohingya, if you see any derogatory words or slurs being said, why don't you call it out? Why don't you question that? You need to have these uncomfortable conversations for change to occur, because otherwise, like you said, we will all just be agreeing on the same thing, and atrocities such as genocide will carry on.
Thank you. That was quite an important message. And thank you to our panelists for answering these uncomfortable and thought-provoking questions.
Our question time segment has come to a close. We will now like to ask you, the viewers, to ask us any questions you have. Sarazul Islam will now open the floor to anyone who would like to ask us questions. Thank you.
So we've got a question from our viewer. Our viewer said, how do we get involved in the fight for justice? Is there any volunteers?
Yes, I would like to answer this question. So just to reiterate, how do we get involved in the fight for justice? So there are many different ways to get involved. You can, obviously today we have used our voice to speak on a platform such as this webinar. However, there are ways to fundraise for, medical supplies, food supplies to Rohingya, Bangladesh, the refugee camps. And that's on a smaller scale. On a wider scale, we need people to rally and lobby the governments to get, action taking place. And on an even wider scale, we need international communities to hear our voice and take responsibility. These are human beings. Just because you are in a position of power does not mean we can overlook this genocide. You need to, as an international community, you need to condemn the Burmese government, condemn the Burmese military for their actions. This is the worst thing we've seen since the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust. This is the reason why we went to Auschwitz, because we do not want history to repeat itself. So please, international community, please, everyone who is Rohingya, who is non-Rohingya, who cares about the lives of human beings, please try and do something for us. Try and do something for the refugees who are suffering in their camps right now, thinking, why is the world not helping us now? Thank you.
Thank you for answering that question so eloquently. Our next question from another viewer is, would you prefer to retain August 25th permanently for the Rohingyas and as Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day, or eventually to broaden it to include situations of mass atrocity in other parts of Burma? So I think I would like to answer this question if it's possible, because it is a topic very, very close to my heart. And thank you to Debbie for asking this question. 25th August has been remembered as Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day, to remember the exodus of our people. However, we must remember our genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the mass persecution, the mass migration and displacement did not start in 2017. Rather, it was a systematic and systemic, actually, process of genocide, of a slow burning genocide that started decades ago. My parents, their parents faced this genocide. I had to stay in the refugee camp for 8 years. My parents, 18, and my grandma, 30. So you can see the different levels of generation, the 3 generations, we've all went through this genocide. And because of this genocide, we've all had experience with this persecution. So to retain 25th as permanently as Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day would be ideal, because it does justice to our people. It does justice to everyone that I went through the entire genocide on one of the largest scale in Burma and in Southeast Asia. However, we must remember to keep our brothers and sisters that are in other parts of Burma and Myanmar in our prayers, and to include them eventually, because it is them who also that are along with us in this fight, both for their rights and our rights. The Myanmar military did not leave any other ethnic minorities untouched. So eventually, we would like to include other people, other groups that faced this mass atrocity in other parts of Burma to be included in remembrance, because like us, they deserve this. Like us, we must remember other people are also facing persecution, facing mass atrocities at the hands of the Myanmar military. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take on this next one. Yeah. So thank you, Sarazal, for your input. So Helen Connelly, thank you so much for showing interest in our blogs. We are going to release our blog after this webinar, so please keep in touch with us. And yeah, thank you so much for asking us if you can use our blogs, because our bloggers worked really hard on this, and this is very it was ideal to do this because the bloggers come from different ages and they have different experiences. Some were born in the camp, some were born in the UK. So this is a really diverse lot, and we have some really good content. So thank you for showing interest. We will definitely release the blogs after this webinar. Thank you. So yeah, now we would like to convey a message of solidarity and hope to everyone who is spending Rohingya Remembrance Day in constant memory of all the helpless victims of this brutal and horrific genocide.
Thank you. It is today I sit in front of you with a heavy heart to remember all the mass atrocities that our brothers and sisters have had to go through. However, we must not lose hope. We must focus on what's ahead in front of us. We must focus on direct action. As Rohingya youth of the United Kingdom, it is our utmost responsibility to stand up for people and those whom have suffered. As a human being, it becomes our duty to stand up for the rights of the oppressed and to speak out against injustice. It is because of you, it is because of our international community we are here today. Because someone cared, someone decided to no longer be a bystander, someone decided to speak out against injustice. And because of you, we have made so much progress. And as youth, and especially to our youth viewers in all around the world, I want you to take action, because it is you who can do this. Today, it is you and I who will make this change happen. Today, we promise ourselves to stand up for what is right. As youth, we have to shape the future of tomorrow into what you would like to by changing our present. Now I ask you, do you want to live in an unjust world? Do you want to live in a world where there's no justice for minorities? Do you want to live in a world where there's no human rights for us? Or do you want to change that today and shape the future of tomorrow? As youth, we have the power to do this. And thank you, most importantly, to the UK government for allowing us to do this. Thank you to the UK government for taking a leading action in helping the Rohingyas and their causes. So today I ask you, and I leave you with this message: do you want to side with the just or the unjust. Thank you.
Now, our Rohingya people have suffered for decades. We must also remember our fellow brothers and sisters and those who have faced similar brutality at the hands of the Burmese military. We dedicate our fight for justice and desire to make change to all groups in Burma who are also suffering. We are in solidarity with those both in IDP and refugee camps. We remember you and your sacrifices. My Rakhine, Kachin, Karen, Chin, Shan brothers and sisters, we are with you. Together, we are much stronger. So today, thank you for staying tuned in. We are at the very end of today's webinar, but before you go, please watch a video on Rohingya Remembrance Day made by all of our incredible Rohingya youth speakers. We would like to thank Brooke for setting up this platform and allowing us to independently organize this project. Also, we hope you can understand that all of us here today are not representative of all Rohingya youth. We are not part of an established organization. We are here purely to speak our mind on the Rohingya issue, which is something that is very close to our hearts. We strongly encourage all youth to do their own actions, just like we have done today. And please be assured that you have our full support. So now I will play the video.
Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day today marks the horrific exodus of our Rohingya people, an ongoing genocide involving rape, torture, and mass displacement of our people in the Arakan state.
When campaigning for the rights of human beings, it is often easy to forget the true extent of the brutality and the immorality that victims of genocides have to go through nearly every single day of their lives.
From the desecrated, ash-coated villages in Arakan to the muddy, infected grounds in Quatapalong camp, the Rohingyan people have faced terrors unimaginable.
For our Rohingya brothers and sisters whose only fight is for survival, we as a Rohingya youth believe it is our utmost responsibility to speak for the voiceless and educate ourselves about our history, our culture, and ultimately fight for a future where we no longer see our fellow Rohingya die in vain.
Burmese Rohingya Organization UK gave us a fantastic opportunity to fly over to Auschwitz, Poland, where we had the chance to delve into the past and learn about the Holocaust, a genocide that wiped out nearly 6 million Jewish people during the World War II.
Walking around the extermination and concentration camps in Auschwitz-Birkenau, it was shocking to see the remnants of people that were left behind. There were elements of identity scattered around, such as hair, clothes, suitcases, and shoes. These were all stripped away from the Jews by Hitler with the intention of destroying a generation and every other generation after that.
It was an emotional as well as eye-opening experience. Walking on the same ground that Jewish people walked all those years, we saw striking similarity between the treatment of Jews and political prisoners of Nazi Germany and our Rohingya people.
To be free is not merely to cast one's chance, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. We, the Rohingya youth, would like you to consider, can we live free in this world if our Rohingya people are spending their life paying for the failures of humanity?
History will record the crimes of bystanders. It is up to each of you to choose whether you want to side with the just or the criminals. With history repeating itself before our very own eyes, what does justice for the Rohingya mean to you?
Thank you. I hope you all saw that video and took something from it. It is just about something, a little memory we brought back from Auschwitz, Poland. It is something our youth saw and did when our own youth, who also faced genocide, walked in the steps of Rohingya, of the Auschwitz prisoners. They themselves then realized the true extent and brutality of a fascist government. And then they seen outside that their own people are going through the same genocide. I always ask myself, especially after visiting Auschwitz twice, if I had been a German 75 years ago, if I was born a few decades earlier, if I had been a German, a Brit, or for a matter of fact, anyone that was outside of the concentration camps, anyone that was seeing the actions of Hitler and the Nazis and the Nazi regime, would I have stood up for the rights of minorities? Would I have stood up for the Jewish people? Would I have stood up against injustice? And would I have stood up against Hitler himself? Now, we don't need to think about this question, and we don't need to go into the path of what if history. Stop today and reflect on yourself. Look outside. What are you doing? What are you doing today? Is what you would have done 75 years ago to stop a genocide. Tell me today, are you allowing a genocide to continue? Are you allowing the rights of minorities to be stripped all around the world? Or are you the one speaking up for them and standing up for them? It is you who is going to choose the fate of yourself and of history. It is you who is going to have to stop another genocide, another Hitler. Because believe me, although this genocide has been a slow burning one and it has been going on for decades, it is not over yet. Our people have not received any justice, any accountability, or any of their human rights. It is right now up to you to take action to change this. It is up to you to help us, to help our people. It is up to you to make a change in today's world. So after this webinar, I do not want you to feel sympathy for us. I don't want you to feel pity towards me. I don't want you to feel sorry for me and my people. I want you to take action. Your actions will speak louder than your words. Your action is ultimately what's going to determine whether we Rohingyas get our rights or not. What actions could you take? One must ask. You can start off with simple actions. Please educate yourself on the Rohingya genocide. Just because the headlines have become fewer and the news coverage has become less doesn't mean our people are suffering less. Neither does it mean that the genocide is over. I want you to educate yourself today on the Rohingya genocide and other conflicts around the world. And then, depending on which part of the world you're in, I want you to write to your senators, your MPs, a member of parliament, government in action. I want you to write directly to them, demanding them to take action on an international scale, demanding them to help the Gambia take action in the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. We want accountability, we want justice. And on a more personal level, I want you to get in touch with us, other Rohingyas around the UK, around Europe, around Southeast Asia, and listen to our stories. Like I said before, we are more than just a number. We are humans. We have real emotions. So the final action you can take is go out there and do something about this. After this webinar, even if you did or didn't know about the Rohingya genocide, now you do. So it becomes your responsibility. It becomes you who's going to take action, who's going to change the face of today. It becomes your responsibility to create a just world for you and those coming forward. And with that, there's an end to our webinar. And I thank everyone, all our panelists and all our viewers for watching this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ara, tuarafati.
Thank you for listening. We wish you all the best. Please remember that we are with you.
Ara tuarafati asi.
We are all in this together.
We are all in this together.
Ara tuarafati asi.
Ara طرفات ياسي.
على طرفات ياسي.
Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work in this webinar. I hope you've taken something away from this. We will be now ending this webinar, and thank you so much for listening.